Old woman buys groceries for a broke young couple. What they did on her birthday left her in tears. She never expected to be noticed, much less remembered. Evelyn Cole shuffled slowly out of the grocery store, the wheels of her shopping cart squeaking as they rolled over the cracked pavement. The weight of her groceries wasn't what made her back itchy, it was time. Time had pressed down on her bones, taken her husband, and now, in the stillness of her days, it was threatening to take her spirit too. Inside the cart sat only a modest collection: milk, some apples, oatmeal, a small bag of rice, and a discounted birthday cake she'd picked up out of habit, even though there was no one left to sing to her. Tomorrow, she'd turn 81. A gust of wind brushed past her, and she tugged her coat tighter. It was early March, that strange season between winter's bite and spring's promise. The wind carried laughter. Her eyes instinctively followed the sound to a young couple at the side of the parking lot. They were standing beside a rusty sedan with one door that wouldn't close all the way. The woman cradled a baby wrapped in two mismatched blankets. The man, maybe in his early 20s, stood beside her, counting coins in his palm. Evelyn couldn't look away. There was something raw about them, something that reminded her of a winter long ago, when she and Arthur had nothing but a cold apartment, a broken radiator, and a baby girl they hadn't quite figured out how to feed yet. She pushed her cart their way. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Are you two all right?" The man looked up, startled. Yeah, just a little short for groceries." The woman gave a small smile, weary but polite. "We'll manage." Evelyn glanced at the baby's tiny feet. They were bare. She didn't hesitate. "Come inside," she said gently, nodding toward the automatic doors behind her. "Let me help." They protested. Of course they did, but not for long. Inside, Evelyn led them through the aisles with surprising energy. She asked the baby's name, Lila, and made little faces that drew out soft giggles. She handed over jars of formula, diapers, baby wipes, then added some bread, eggs, soup cans, and pasta for the parents. Every time they tried to take something out of the cart, she placed it back in with a firm glance that silenced further argument. At the checkout, she paid for everything. "Happy early birthday to me," she said, handing over her card with a wink. They stood frozen for a second. Then the woman stepped forward and hugged her tightly. "My name's Harper," she whispered. "And this is Eli. I don't know how to thank you." "Just take care of your little one," Evelyn replied. "And yourselves." They offered to help carry her groceries. She declined. By the time she reached her car, tears were threatening to spill. Not because of sadness, but because of something she hadn't felt in a long-time connection. The memory of a hug, the sound of laughter, the warmth of someone's hand on hers. It lingered in her heart all the way home. Evelyn lived alone in a quiet house tucked away on a tree-lined street where no children played anymore, and the mailman came and went without much fanfare. Arthur had passed 10 years ago, and their daughter Melissa had moved across the country and now sent brief birthday cards that sounded more like obligations than love letters. She didn't blame her. Evelyn had made mistakes. She'd once chosen her pride over their closeness, and time had widened the rift into silence. But that night, as she sat by the window sipping weak tea and looking at the moon through a lace curtain, she felt a warmth she hadn't known in years. A moment of grace, wrapped in the smell of baby powder and cinnamon. Tomorrow, she would turn 81, and that would be enough. The next day came like any other. Evelyn woke at 6, took her medication, and fed the two stray cats that had adopted her porch. She dressed in her softest sweater and read the newspaper cover to cover, even though it bored her. She lit a small candle beside the cake she'd bought, whispered a quiet wish for nothing in particular, then sliced herself a sliver. She didn't expect more. Until the knock at the door. She blinked. No one ever came by unannounced. When she opened it, Harper stood there holding baby Lila now in a pink beanie and matching socks. Eli was beside her with a brown paper bag, and behind them stood a small group of people. Neighbors Evelyn hadn't spoken to in years. The mailman, the woman from the pharmacy, even a teenager who lived down the block and always had headphones in. They all smiled. "Happy birthday, Evelyn," Harper said softly. She couldn't speak. Harper stepped forward and placed a gentle kiss on her cheek. "You didn't just buy us groceries. You gave us hope. So we thought maybe we could return the favor." Eli handed her the bag. Inside were homemade cards, candles, and a scarf someone had knitted in lavender wool. And then the teenager's name was Mason stepped up and held out a little box. Inside was a photo frame. In it, someone had placed a printed snapshot one Evelyn hadn't realized had even been taken off her pushing the grocery cart beside Harper and Eli that day. The baby was laughing. Evelyn's smile was wide, genuine, full of life. "We took it from the parking lot cameras," Eli chuckled. "Hope that's okay." Evelyn stared at it, breath caught in her chest. A single tear slipped down her cheek. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything," Harper said. "Just let us be here. Let this day be yours." So they came inside. Someone brought coffee. Mason played guitar softly in the corner. The mailman shared stories of Evelyn's kindness with the neighborhood cats. Lila gurgled in Harper's lap, and Evelyn sat in the center of it all, wrapped in lavender wool and surrounded by people. Real people. Kindness, she realized, was never truly forgotten. Sometimes, it just needed time to bloom. And on the day she turned 81, Evelyn Cole, who had once felt invisible, was seen. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden hue across Evelyn's modest living room. The soft hum of conversation mingled with the clink of teacups and the occasional coo from baby Lila. Evelyn sat in her favorite armchair, the knitted lavender scarf now draped around her thin shoulders like a protective charm. She hadn't hosted anyone in her home in years. For so long, the house had echoed with silence. The kitchen table had grown used to meals for one, and the couches remembered more dust than warmth. Now, laughter filled the corners. Smiles painted the walls. And Evelyn's heart, long dormant from too many solitary birthdays, now beat with a sense of belonging. Mason, the teenager from down the street, strummed a soft, almost hesitant melody on his guitar. He wasn't a performer, Evelyn could tell, but there was something brave about the way he offered his music, shaky fingers and all. "This one's for you, Miss Evelyn," he said quietly. She blinked away the moisture in her eyes and nodded, placing a hand over her heart. "Thank you, dear." The song was simple, something about growing older and holding on to the light. Evelyn closed her eyes and let it wrap around her. She could almost hear Arthur's deep chuckle, smell the faint scent of sawdust on his flannel shirt, feel the press of her daughter's small hand in hers as they walked to school so many years ago. She had memories. But tonight, she had presence. And that mattered more than she ever realized. After the guests had left, one by one, each offering gentle hugs and promises to come visit again soon, Evelyn stood at her front door and watched them fade down the street. The stars blinked softly above, and the chill air nipped at her skin, but she didn't mind. She wasn't cold. Harper was the last to linger. "You have no idea how much that day meant to us," she said, rocking Lila gently in her arms. "We were so close to giving up, sleeping in our car, eating crackers, and hoping Lila wouldn't notice." Evelyn nodded slowly. "I know what that kind of fear feels like." Harper studied her, eyes full of quiet gratitude. "You saved us. I didn't do anything special. You saw us," Harper said firmly. "And that meant everything." Evelyn smiled, a tear catching in the corner of her eye. "Then you just gave me the best birthday gift I've ever had." They hugged again, and Evelyn held on a little longer this time. After they left, she didn't turn off the lights right away. She sat back in her armchair, the photo of the grocery store moment in her hands. She ran her fingers along the edge of the frame, as if she could press the memory into her skin. She didn't feel old tonight. She felt whole. The next morning, Evelyn awoke to a soft knock at the door. She blinked in surprise. It was barely 7 a.m. When she opened it, a small brown package sat at her feet, tied with twine and a sprig of rosemary. There was no note. Inside were 3 loaves of homemade bread, still warm, and a tiny envelope containing a gift card to the grocery store. Scrawled on the back were the words, "Thank you for feeding our family. Let us feed you now, E&H." She stood there for a long time, holding the loaves to her chest, eyes closed. The world was still full of goodness. It just needed a chance. Over the next few weeks, Evelyn's days began to change. People she'd only ever waved at from across the street started knocking on her door with baked goods or fresh flowers. The pharmacist offered to drop off her prescriptions. Mason came by every Saturday with his guitar, just to sit and play while she listened. The loneliness that once haunted her home like a ghost now drifted quietly away, chased off by laughter, music, and warm hands that held hers when she needed it. And Harper? She visited often, sometimes with Eli and Lila, sometimes alone. She started helping Evelyn with small chores around the house, rearranging the spice cabinet, dusting forgotten shelves, sitting on the porch to talk about life, love, and how hard it was to be a mother when you'd barely stopped being a child yourself. Evelyn listened. She had always been a good listener. And Harper? She needed someone who wouldn't judge her for the messy parts of her life. I feel like I'm living two lives, Harper admitted one afternoon, rocking Lila in the porch swing. The one where I'm trying to be a good mom and stay strong for Eli, and the one where I'm terrified every second that I'm going to fail. You won't, Evelyn said firmly. How can you be so sure? Evelyn looked out at the street, where the wind danced through the trees. Because you asked that question. Because you care. Because you're here, doing the work, even when it's hard. That's what being a mother is. Harper wiped her eyes. I wish I had a mom like you. Evelyn reached over and squeezed her hand. You do now? Spring arrived slowly, like an old friend tiptoeing back into town. Flowers bloomed. Birds returned. And Evelyn began to see color in places that had once seemed gray. Then came the day that changed everything again. It was a Thursday. Evelyn had just returned from her doctor's appointment routine. Nothing serious, though her knees had started protesting more than usual when she noticed a for rent sign gone from the small house 2 doors down. Curious, she walked over, using her cane for support. The front door was open, boxes inside. Evelyn. Harper called out from the kitchen. Come in. She blinked. You're moving in? Harper nodded, smiling. We got approved for the place. It's not much, but it's ours. Evelyn stepped forward and looked around. The house was old but full of light. It smelled like lemons and sawdust, and something new beginning. She turned to Harper, speechless. You're going to be my neighbor? Harper laughed. We're going to be family. Eli appeared from a back room, holding a stack of plates. We're painting Lila's room pale yellow. Thought it felt like sunshine. Evelyn's heart swelled. Would you like help unpacking? She asked. Harper grinned. Only if you tell me where to put the spoons. They spent the rest of the afternoon laughing, sorting through mismatched dishes and secondhand furniture. And as Evelyn showed Harper how to make her favorite lemon scones from memory, something inside her shifted again. She wasn't just receiving kindness anymore. She was sharing her life. And it was enough. More than enough. The days turned to weeks, and the little street began to change subtly, but surely. It started with the flowers. Evelyn planted them with Harper one sunny Saturday morning. Marigolds, petunias, and lavender lined the small space between their 2 houses. It had been years since Evelyn touched the soil with joy, but that day, she dug in without hesitation, the dirt under her fingernails bringing back memories of gardening with Arthur on their first home. Plants are like people, Evelyn said, gently patting soil around a young lavender sprig. They need light, patience, and a bit of love to bloom. Harper smiled, brushing her hair out of her face. Sounds like parenting. Evelyn chuckled. Exactly. Neighbors paused on their walks to wave or offer compliments on the garden. Mason came by with his little sister, helping dig holes for daffodil bulbs. The shy woman from across the street brought over compost. The pharmacy clerk dropped off seed packets, just because. Something was blooming beyond the flowers. A community was being reborn. But not all seasons stayed sunny. Eli had been quiet for weeks. Evelyn noticed at first how he stopped whistling in the mornings when he brought out the trash, how he smiled less when he played with Lila, how his shoulders sagged even when holding Harper's hand. One evening, as Evelyn brought over a casserole, she found Harper pacing the porch, her hands trembling. Something's wrong, she whispered. He's been distant. Quiet. I think he lost his job. Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine. Did he say that? No. But he comes home late, smells like oil, and never talks about work anymore. We were barely getting by as it was. Evelyn thought for a long moment. Harper, she said gently, men carry shame in silence, especially when they feel like they're failing the ones they love. Tears welled in Harper's eyes. I don't want him to feel alone. He's not, Evelyn said, but he needs to know that. He needs permission to let the weight fall. That night, Harper waited for Eli to come home and asked him softly, lovingly, if everything was okay. It wasn't. He'd lost his job 3 weeks ago. His boss let him go when they cut hours, promising to call if things improved. But that call never came. Eli had been borrowing money from a friend to keep the lights on and was ashamed to admit it. I failed you, he whispered. I failed Lila. No, Harper said, holding his face. You carried us when no one else did. It's our turn to carry you. The next day, Evelyn helped Harper write up a simple resume. Mason taught Eli how to search for work online. Even the mailman chimed in with a lead for a maintenance job at the local school. 2 weeks later, Eli got the job, and the house felt lighter again. Spring turned into summer. The garden thrived. Lila began to crawl, then wobbled on her feet, babbling nonsense and lighting up every room with her gummy smile. Evelyn knitted her a blanket in soft blues and whites and watched the little girl grow into a symbol of everything she thought she'd lost: joy, purpose, and hope. Harper, now more confident and grounded, began volunteering at the community center once a week. She spoke to other young mothers about perseverance and kindness, always mentioning Evelyn's name with reverence. One evening, Evelyn found a card tucked in her mailbox. It was from Melissa, her daughter. Dear Mom, I saw something online, a post about an old woman who helped a young couple in a grocery store. I didn't know it was you until I looked closely at the photo. I cried. I don't know why we stopped talking. Maybe it was pride, or time, or too many things left unsaid. But I'm ready to start again if you are. Happy belated birthday. Love, Melissa. Evelyn stared at the letter, her hands shaking. Her heart felt like it might burst. She reread the last line over and over again. I'm ready to start again if you are. She placed the card on the mantel beside the photo frame of her with Harper and Eli and the baby. The past couldn't be erased, but maybe it could be forgiven. The call came a few days later. Melissa's voice was soft, uncertain, but warm. I heard you became the neighborhood hero, she teased gently. I don't know about that, Evelyn said, tears already slipping down her cheeks. I just bought some groceries. They talked for over an hour. About everything. About nothing. About Arthur. About the fight they had years ago that neither really remembered the cause of. About birthdays and regrets, and the way time steals people if you let it. Melissa said she'd come visit soon with her kids. Evelyn clutched the phone to her chest after the call ended, then sobbed full, open-hearted sobs that emptied something inside her. Forgiveness, she realized, was the heaviest weight to lift. But once it was gone, everything else felt light. Summer deepened. The community garden blossomed. Neighbors who barely nodded before were now friends. They brought lawn chairs to Evelyn's front yard for weekend coffee. Children played in the driveway. Harper and Eli hosted a small cookout where Evelyn danced, barefoot, to Mason's music under strings of fairy lights. Lila took her first real steps toward Evelyn. Everyone cheered. Someone caught it on video and posted it online. Again, the story spread, this time of the elderly woman who became a neighborhood grandmother and the young couple who helped her remember how to live. The story reached thousands, then tens of thousands. People commented things like, "My grandma used to knit us blankets like that. The world needs more Evelyns." This made me cry at work. In the best way. Evelyn never cared about fame, but she did care about impact. And quietly, day by day, she saw it happen. One rainy afternoon, as Harper helped Evelyn sort through an old box in the attic, they came across a stack of letters tied with twine, slightly yellowed. "Are these love letters?" Harper asked, eyes wide. Evelyn laughed softly. "Yes. Arthur wrote them to me during the war." Harper read a few aloud, her voice catching on the tender words. "My darling Evelyn, I miss your apple pie and the way you roll your eyes when I steal the last slice. Promise me we'll grow old together." "I want this kind of love," Harper whispered. Evelyn squeezed her hand. "You're already building it." They spent the rest of the day reading letters, sipping tea, and reminiscing on lives both past and present. In that dusty attic, surrounded by memory, Evelyn realized something profound. Her life wasn't winding down. It was being passed on. Not in the form of money or heirlooms, but in laughter, compassion, and the strength to keep going when life feels impossible. And that, she thought, is the real legacy. Autumn came quietly, brushing the trees with gold and fire. The wind turned cooler. Evelyn pulled out her heavier cardigans and found joy again in brewing hot tea by the kitchen window, watching the leaves drift like old memories. Harper's house had transformed in the months since they moved in. Bright curtains framed the windows, children's toys scattered the lawn, and laughter could be heard at nearly any hour of the day. It had become a living Tina home, not just shelter. But with change comes challenges. Evelyn had noticed Harper coughing lately, nothing violent, just a dry, persistent rasp that returned every afternoon. At first Harper brushed it off, blaming dust or lack of sleep. But Evelyn's eyes had seen illness before. She had sat beside too many hospital beds not to recognize the signs. One morning, after Harper doubled over in the garden, Evelyn pressed a firm hand to her shoulder. "You need to see someone," she said. Harper hesitated. "We don't have the money for doctors right now. We're still paying off Eli's dental bill from last month." "Then we'll find a clinic," Evelyn replied. "There's one downtown that takes sliding scale payments. I'll go with you." That afternoon, Harper agreed. They sat in a small waiting room filled with young mothers and elderly couples, fluorescent lights humming above them like nervous bees. Evelyn held Harper's hand when they called her name. It wasn't serious bronchitis, the doctor said. A course of antibiotics and rest would take care of it. Still, the scare shook Harper. "I didn't realize how much I've been holding in," she admitted in the car ride home. "I keep telling myself we're okay, but sometimes I don't feel okay." Evelyn reached over and took her hand. "You don't have to be strong all the time." Harper's eyes shimmered. "Thank you for not letting me disappear." "You helped me first," Evelyn whispered. "I'm just returning the favor." Days passed, then weeks. Melissa called more frequently, sometimes just to talk, other times to ask about recipes or share photos of Evelyn's grandkids, whom she hadn't seen in over 5 years. Then, one chilly Friday afternoon, Evelyn opened her front door to find Melissa standing on her porch, 2 kids in tow. No warning, no call, just her daughter. Older, of course, eyes a little more tired, hair swept up in a bun, holding the tension of motherhood and distance and guilt. "Hi, Mom," Melissa said softly. Evelyn didn't speak. She simply opened her arms. The hug was quiet, but in it lived years of longing. When Melissa's voice finally broke, it came out in sobs that clutched Evelyn's cardigan like a child again. "I'm sorry," she whispered into her mother's shoulder. "I should have come sooner." "You came," Evelyn said. "That's all that matters." The children, Emily, age 8, and Jack, 6, stepped forward shyly. Evelyn knelt with effort, smiling through her tears. "I've heard so much about you too," she said. "Would you like to come in for cookies and stories?" Their faces lit up like sunrise. That evening, the house was filled with more voices than it had known in decades. Evelyn read from old storybooks. Harper and Eli stopped by with Lila to meet Melissa, and Mason strummed gentle songs in the background. The fireplace crackled. The children giggled under handmade quilts. It felt like home. A home Evelyn never thought she'd see again. But life, in its imperfect beauty, always shifts. One morning, Evelyn struggled to rise from bed. Her body ached more than usual. Her breath came slower. There was a pressure in her chest that wasn't pain, exactly, but it wasn't right either. Harper noticed first. She came by with Lila and found Evelyn still in her robe, staring out the window without her usual spark. "You okay?" she asked gently. Evelyn smiled faintly. "Just tired. Want me to take you to the clinic?" "No," she replied. "Let's not make a fuss." But Harper didn't listen. 2 hours later, Evelyn was in a hospital bed, monitored and examined. The diagnosis wasn't dramatic mild congestive heart failure, common for her age, but it came with strict instructions: less exertion, more rest, and routine care. Melissa flew in the next day. She stayed a week. During that time, she helped organize Evelyn's medications, scheduled follow-up appointments, and rearranged the house so everything Evelyn needed was within arm's reach. She even brought Emily and Jack by after school to help with groceries and sit for tea time on the porch. "You know," Melissa said one night as they washed dishes side by side, "I spent years being mad at you." "I know," Evelyn whispered. "I thought you chose your pride over me. Over us." "I probably did," Evelyn admitted. "I thought I was protecting you, but I think I was just afraid." Melissa looked at her, eyes soft. "I'm not angry anymore." "That's a relief," Evelyn said with a laugh. "Because I was hoping to live long enough to be forgiven." They stood in silence for a moment, water running, the scent of soap and lemon lingering in the air. Then Melissa said, "I love you, Mom." And Evelyn, with a cracking voice, replied, "I've never stopped loving you." Winter arrived, crisp and quiet. The garden faded beneath frost, but Evelyn didn't mind. She had knitted scarves for the kids, made a little coat for Lila, and insisted on teaching Harper how to make a proper pot roast before the holidays. One night, as snow drifted gently outside, Evelyn sat in her chair by the window, surrounded by the people who now made up her world: Harper, Eli, Melissa, the children, Mason, the mailman, and even the pharmacist who had become a regular visitor. Evelyn raised her teacup. To found families, she said, to second chances, and to kindness, the kind that doesn't just change one day, but a whole life. They toasted with warm mugs. And as the fire crackled and laughter returned once more to the walls of her home, Evelyn felt something deeper than happiness. She felt peace. The kind of peace that comes not from getting everything you want, but from knowing you gave what you could, and somehow, that was enough. Even in winter, Evelyn's heart bloomed. Evelyn's 82nd birthday arrived beneath a sky streaked with silver clouds and soft winter light. She didn't expect much, perhaps a slice of cake, a few visitors, maybe a call from Melissa if her schedule allowed. She hadn't told anyone it was her birthday. She didn't want a fuss. But as she stepped out onto her porch that morning, something felt different. There were ribbons tied to her mailbox, lavender and gold, her favorite colors. A small sign was posted in her garden bed. Happy birthday to the woman who reminded this neighborhood how to care. She blinked, stunned. Then Harper emerged from her front door, holding a giant bouquet of hand-picked flowers and Lila bundled up in a sweater Evelyn had knit months ago. You really thought we'd forget? Harper said, smiling wide. Evelyn opened her mouth, but no words came. Within an hour, neighbors began to arrive, dozens of them. People Evelyn had once only known in passing now hugged her like family. The shy woman from across the street brought a lemon pie. Mason strummed Happy Birthday on his guitar while the neighborhood kids sang along, a little off-key, but full of joy. The pharmacist showed up with a framed photo collage of Evelyn in her garden, surrounded by people she'd touched. Melissa and her children arrived, two driving 7 hours just to be there. They brought Evelyn a hand-bound journal, its pages filled with letters from people all across the town. Harper had started it. She had shared Evelyn's story on a community board, asking if anyone had ever been helped by her or simply touched by her presence. The book was over half full. Messages like, "You helped me find the courage to speak to my estranged father again. Your kindness reminded me that not all strangers are scary. I saw how you held Harper's baby. That gave me hope to keep mine." Evelyn read until her hands trembled and her tears blurred the ink. "This," she whispered, "is too much." Melissa knelt beside her. "No, Mom. This is exactly what you gave to the world," reflected back. That afternoon, the porch became a stage. Mason played while kids danced. Eli grilled sausages while neighbors passed around plates. Harper brought out a homemade cake, lavender frosting with sugared violets on top, and everyone joined in to sing. Evelyn stood as they finished the final notes. She took a deep breath and said, "I never thought I'd see a day like this. Not because I didn't want it, but because I'd convinced myself I didn't deserve it." The crowd quieted. "I made mistakes. I spent years lonely, and I thought my story was winding down. But what you've all shown me is that real love doesn't expire. It waits. And when you offer it freely, without expecting anything in return, sometimes it comes back in ways that leave you breathless." She paused, voice shaking. "So thank you for reminding me that I matter, that I still have a place in this world. You've given me more than a birthday. You've given me a beginning." The applause was soft but full of heart. Harper leaned in and whispered, "You saved our family, Evelyn. You changed everything." Evelyn smiled. "And you gave me one." That night, after everyone left and the porch was littered with streamers and footprints in the snow, Evelyn sat by the window in her favorite chair, the birthday journal in her lap. She didn't feel 82. She felt infinite. The clock ticked quietly. Outside, the wind rustled bare branches. And from the window, she could see Harper and Eli's porch light, still on, Lila's little shadow bouncing behind the curtains. Evelyn closed her eyes and breathed deeply. This wasn't the life she'd planned. It was better. In the weeks that followed, something beautiful happened. Melissa started sending postcards every week, each with a recipe or memory or drawing from Emily and Jack. Evelyn began writing her own notes back, little messages full of warmth and forgiveness, folded into envelopes and sealed with lavender wax. Harper and Eli, inspired by their journey, started a blog, Grocery Store Grace. It told the story of that day when an old woman changed everything and grew into a space where people shared stories of kindness. It spread quickly. Local papers picked it up, then bigger media outlets. One day, Harper called Evelyn, breathless. "You're on the front page of the Sunday magazine." Evelyn laughed, holding the phone. "About time someone recognized my stunning garden." They both giggled. One snowy evening, a knock came at Evelyn's door. When she opened it, a young woman stood there, barely 20, holding a worn coat too thin for the cold. "I'm sorry," she said. "I don't mean to bother you. Someone online told me if I was ever really lost to come here." Evelyn didn't hesitate. She reached out and pulled the girl inside. "You're not lost," she said gently. "You just need a place to start." She made tea, offered soup, listened as the girl cried, and shared the pieces of her story: an abusive home, nights on benches, no money, no one who cared. Evelyn nodded, never once judging. The next morning, she called Harper. And by that afternoon, the girl had a place to stay, a bed, warm clothes, a job interview at the pharmacy, and a community to support her. Evelyn had become the beating heart of the street, and her kindness echoed outward like ripples in a pond. 1 year passed, then 2. Evelyn grew slower, a little more fragile. But her mind remained sharp, and her home, once quiet and lonely, was now alive with visitors, music, and laughter. She celebrated her 84th birthday under a canopy of flowers in the front yard. Her porch was strung with lights. Melissa, Harper, and half the neighborhood were there. Lila, now nearly 3, sang her a birthday song, all on her own, cheeks flushed with joy. As the sun set, Evelyn looked around her at the life she had helped build and whispered a prayer of gratitude into the wind. She had not just lived, she had mattered. The day Evelyn passed was quiet and full of peace. She was found in her chair, the journal in her lap, a soft smile on her lips. The last entry, written in neat, careful script, read: "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. But don't be sad. I've lived enough for 10 lives. I've been loved deeply. I've been forgiven. And I've forgiven myself. That's all I ever wanted. Keep loving each other. Keep feeding strangers. And never stop believing in the good. I'll be in every garden bloom, every warm cup of tea, every act of kindness passed forward. Love, Evelyn." Her funeral was held in the community garden. Dozens came. Harper spoke first, voice steady but emotional. "She changed everything for us. For me. She saw us when no one else did." Then Melissa stood. "She was my mother. And though we lost years, she gave me everything in the time we found again. I will love her for the rest of my life." People brought flowers, letters, homemade bread. Even strangers came, people who had only heard her story online but felt changed by it. They planted a tree in the garden that day, a lavender tree. Its roots were strong, in memory of Evelyn Cole. She gave what she had, and in doing so, gave us everything. And so, the story of Evelyn, the old woman who once bought groceries for a struggling young couple, became more than a tale of kindness. It became a legacy, passed from heart to heart, person to person, forever blooming.